The investigation into Sunday's deadly Ethiopian Airlines crash is affecting entire fleets. Several countries and airlines announced Monday they are grounding Boeing 737 MAX 8 planes, the model involved in the crash. The plane was supposed to fly from Ethiopia to Kenya. It went down just after takeoff, killing all 157 people on board. It was the second deadly crash of that model in 5 months. CBS News foreign correspondent Deborah Patta is in Ethiopia.
Investigators hope that the 2 black box flight recorders recovered today will contain some of the answers as to why the Boeing 737 MAX 8 went down. It had only been in operation for 4 months. Within seconds of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 taking off, it was clear something was very wrong. The pilot made an urgent distress call wanting to turn the plane around. But then, just 6 minutes into the journey, all contact was lost. It crashed about 30 miles from the capital.
The pilot mentioned that he had difficulty and he wants to return. So he was given clearance.
Eyewitnesses say the plane was trailing smoke and made a sharp turn before nosediving to the ground. It came directly from the sky downwards, one man said. We heard a huge explosion. Piles of mangled debris lay scattered at the crash site. Strewn amongst them, shredded clothing, a passport cover, a single shoe. With over 30 nationalities on board the plane, there was heartbreak felt on every corner of the globe. Pilots and crew of Ethiopian Airlines wept at a vigil for their colleagues. The United Nations was hit hard, losing at least 21 staff members in the crash. Many of them young people who wanted to change the world, like the UK's Joanna Toole and Irish national Michael Ryan, or British citizen Sarah O'Fray, who was tackling marine plastic pollution, and award-winning Nigerian author Pius Adesanmi. From saving refugees to fighting global hunger, the flight manifest read like a who's who of the very best of humanity. There was one person who should have been on that flight but narrowly missed it. Antonis Mavropoulos arrived at the boarding gate just as the doors were closing, and despite begging to get on, he was told he would have to catch a later plane. Being a few minutes late had just saved his life. Elaine?
Wow, remarkable. Deborah Patta, thank you. As we've been reporting, a number of countries and airlines ordered the Boeing 737 MAX 8 grounded following the crash. There are currently 350 of that model in service around the world, with orders for more than 5,000. Boeing stock fell 5% Monday on the news. CBS News transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleave has more.
The FAA sent a notice to all operators of the 737 MAX around the world, saying in part the agency will likely mandate design changes to the aircraft. Those stem from an earlier deadly crash in October. This as the world is waiting for clues to emerge as to what happened on Sunday. Investigators will be looking for any signs the Boeing 737 MAX 8 that crashed Sunday malfunctioned similar to the Lion Air 737 MAX that crashed in Indonesia last October, killing all 189 aboard. The pilots of both jets reported technical difficulties. The 2 planes appeared to struggle to gain altitude before making a steep nosedive and crashing less than 15 minutes after takeoff. Investigators will also probe the actions of the flight crew. The co-pilot of Ethiopian Flight 302 had just 200 hours of flight time. A U.S. airline pilot typically needs a minimum of 1,500 hours. The black boxes will be crucial, according to John Golia, a former member of the NTSB.
So it's going to tell us a lot about how this airplane was flown in the last minutes. And also, it's going to tell us about how the airplane was flown in the previous flights. Was this a problem in a previous flight that is just coming to light on this one?
Tens of thousands of people a day fly on the 72 Boeing 737 MAX planes operated by U.S. airlines. Southwest, American, and United are sticking with the aircraft, and the FAA has not moved to ground the fleet, saying it does not have enough information yet about what happened to Flight 302. But the agency is preparing to move aggressively should data from the black boxes indicate the potential for a systemic problem with the MAX's flight management systems.
It's definitely too early to know that. There's nothing in the factual evidence so far that would support grounding the airplane? Nothing.
But several countries and airlines internationally decided to ground the MAX. And the American Airlines Flight Attendants Union told members they don't have to fly on the MAX if they feel unsafe, though the airline itself said they have full confidence in the aircraft. Boeing CEO sent a message to employees saying, in part, we are confident in the safety of the 737 MAX. California Senator Dianne Feinstein is not confident in the plane's safety. She sent a letter to the FAA calling for the agency to ground all 737 MAX airplanes until the investigation is complete. Elaine?
Chris Van Cleve, thank you. Todd Curtis is an aviation safety analyst and former safety engineer for Boeing. His website, airsafe.com, provides airline safety information for the public. And Todd joins us now from Austin, Texas. Todd, thanks so much for being with us. So 2 fatal crashes in 5 months. Is that enough reason to ground Boeing 737 MAX 8 planes?
At present, there's not enough information to make that decision. On the surface, there are some similarities to the Lion Air event last October, but until they get more solid data, probably from the black boxes, there's no way you can say that there is a solid connection between those two events.
Can you elaborate? I mean, what goes into a decision like that?
Well, it will be a joint decision between the investigative authority, which in this case is run by the Ethiopian government, and the parties to the investigation. At present, the NTSB, with the assistance of the FAA and Boeing, are on site. They're going to be helping the Ethiopian authorities analyze that data. And the FAA, if they find anything that points to some sort of problem with the 737 MAX fleet, they are prepared to make a decision to recommend to the airlines that they either make changes to operations, changes to maintenance, or the ultimate sanction, forcing the operators to not fly the airplanes until further notice.
So to clarify, Todd, I just want to make sure I understand, even if the NTSB has not completed their investigation, if in the course of assisting with that, the FAA feels they have some reason to believe, further action is taken, is needed rather, immediately, the FAA can go ahead and do that?
Absolutely. The FAA does not have to wait for the investigative authorities in Ethiopia to progress to the final stages of the investigation. If data comes out in the next few days, the FAA will make a decision in the next few days.
So authorities are warning, as you know, against drawing too many parallels between the 2 crashes, the one last year. Remind us of the cause of that first crash back in October.
The Lion Air crash, which happened shortly after takeoff, was toward the end of October. And the investigation, which is still ongoing, revealed that there are several things going on with the aircraft, from pilot activities that happened after the airplane encountered difficulties, to maintenance activities prior to the flight, to some of the indication systems in the aircraft that were malfunctioning. And there were some changes that were recommended by the, required by the FAA shortly after that event that addressed many of those issues.
Well, this is a relatively new model of plane. What kind of reputation does it have so far?
Well, it's a very good seller for Boeing. There's roughly 387 in service around the world. And it started service in 2017, so it's a relatively young fleet. And although there's quite a few 737 MAXs, they only represent about 5% of the active 737 fleet. But going forward, this is the model, the 737 MAX 8 and MAX 9. These are the models that Boeing will be producing of the 737. So there will be thousands of these in years to come.
So in the meantime, how will the affected airlines deal with the grounding orders?
It depends on the circumstances. In some cases, the airlines have no choice. Their national authorities mandated that they ground the aircraft. Now, depending on the airline, they may shift passengers to other aircraft. They may cancel flights altogether. And it also depends on how long the grounding takes place. If it is lifted in the next few days, it won't be much of an effect. Currently, the 2 U.S. operators, American and Southwest, have not independently canceled any flights or restricted any activity of their 737 MAXs.
All right, we wait some answers as investigators continue their work. Todd Curtis, thanks very much. And a
Thanks for having me.
You can watch Todd on a new season of Air Disasters, Sundays at 8 Eastern on the Smithsonian Channel. Thank you, Todd.